One of the biggest mistakes a man makes after distance is assuming silence equals indifference. He looks at his phone, sees no messages, no calls, no long paragraphs explaining feelings, and he tells himself a story. She doesn't care anymore. But that conclusion is usually driven by emotion, not understanding. Silence doesn't automatically mean she's forgotten you. People process emotions differently. Many women internalize before they externalize. Instead of immediately expressing what they feel, they step back to sort through it privately. Just because she isn't announcing that she misses you doesn't mean she isn't replaying memories in her head. Just because she's not reaching out doesn't mean she isn't thinking about what happened. When communication stops, men often panic. They want visible proof, they want reassurance, they want something tangible that confirms they still matter. But emotional processing doesn't always show up as immediate action. Sometimes it shows up as quiet reflection. Think about it. When a connection was real, when there were shared moments, laughter, intimacy, inside jokes, emotional vulnerability, those experiences don't just disappear overnight. The human mind doesn't delete meaningful bonds that easily. What often happens instead is space creates perspective. During the relationship or interaction, emotions can get clouded by small frustrations, misunderstandings, or daily tension. But distance removes the noise. Without constant communication, the emotional intensity cools down. And when things cool down, clarity starts to appear. She may start remembering the positive moments more than the arguments. She may reflect on how you handled certain situations. She may compare the way you made her feel to how she feels now. But here's the key, she doesn't always announce that process. A lot of men misinterpret quiet as closure. They assume if she hasn't said she misses them, she must not. That assumption leads to chasing, over texting, or trying to force a reaction. But chasing disrupts the natural emotional cycle that distance creates. When you remain calm and grounded instead of reacting to silence, you allow her internal process to unfold naturally. You don't interrupt it, you don't pressure it. You let time and space do what emotional arguments never can. And often, what you later notice are small indicators, subtle curiosity, indirect contact, random engagement. Those signs usually begin quietly because emotions often return quietly before they return loudly. The absence of communication is not proof of absence of feeling. Sometimes it's just proof that emotions are being processed beneath the surface, and what's processed in silence can grow stronger without you even seeing it. Most men expect obvious signals. They think if she misses them, she'll say it directly. They imagine a dramatic message, a long emotional confession, or a clear statement of regret. But real attraction and real emotion rarely return that way. They return subtly, quietly, indirectly. When a woman starts missing you, the first thing that usually appears is curiosity. Curiosity is low risk. It allows her to move toward you without fully exposing herself. Instead of saying, I miss you, she might watch your stories more consistently. She might like an old photo. She might send a random message about something small that reminds her of you. On the surface, these actions seem insignificant, but psychologically they mean something much deeper. People don't check on what they've emotionally detached from. Attention follows interest. If she's paying attention to your life in any capacity, it means there's still emotional energy there. Curiosity is the bridge between distance and reconnection. But here's where many men go wrong the moment they notice these subtle signs, they overreact, they become overly available, they try to escalate too fast, they interpret a small signal as a full green light and overwhelm the situation. That pressure kills the very curiosity that was building. When you understand that curiosity is fragile, you handle it differently. You stay calm, you respond, but you don't chase, you engage, but you don't over invest. You allow her to take small steps toward you without forcing her to run. Curiosity often grows in stages. First, she observes from a distance, then she interacts lightly, then she tests the waters with small conversations. Each step is her way of measuring the emotional temperature. She wants to see if you're still centered, if you're still confident, if you've grown, if you've changed in positive ways, and this is why your composure matters so much. If she senses desperation the moment she leans in, she'll retreat again. But if she senses calm confidence, if she feels that you're good with or without her, her curiosity deepens. Curiosity creates imagination. She starts wondering what it would feel like to talk to you again, to see you again, to reconnect. And imagination fuels attraction far more than pressure ever could. You don't need a dramatic confession to know she's thinking about you. You just need to recognize the quiet indicators, the small shifts, the subtle engagement. Because when curiosity appears, it's rarely random. It's usually the first quiet sign that she's starting to miss you more than she expected. When a woman creates distance, most men immediately assume the worst. They think she stopped caring. They think the connection is gone. They interpret emotional space as emotional death. But what many fail to understand is that distance is often a response to internal conflict, not the absence of feeling. Strong emotions can be overwhelming. When a connection is intense, when feelings run deep, It can trigger fear just as easily as it triggers excitement. Vulnerability requires trust, attachment creates risk. And sometimes, when emotions start to feel bigger than expected, pulling back feels safer than leaning in. Emotional distance can be a defense mechanism. If she felt uncertain about timing, life circumstances, past wounds, or even her own readiness for something serious, stepping back may have been her way of regaining control. Not because you didn't matter, but because you mattered enough to create emotional pressure. And pressure can feel scary when someone isn't fully grounded. Many men take this personally and react emotionally. They try to solve it with logic, they push for clarity, they demand answers. But internal conflict cannot be resolved through external force. If she's confused about her own feelings, pressure only increases that confusion. Sometimes she needs space to sort out what she actually feels without outside influence. When you're constantly present, constantly reassuring, constantly asking questions, she doesn't get the mental silence required to process honestly. But when you step back, when you allow emotional breathing room, her internal dialogue becomes clearer. And here's the deeper truth: the stronger the original connection, the more complex the emotional processing can become. If you were just another casual interaction, there would be no need for distance. Indifference doesn't require space, it simply fades. Distance often shows there's something meaningful that needs time to settle. She may be battling conflicting thoughts, missing you but afraid of repeating patterns, feeling drawn to you but unsure about long term compatibility, wanting closeness but fearing vulnerability. These emotional contradictions create tension, and tension sometimes leads to withdrawal. Your strength in this situation is patience. When you remain calm instead of reactive, you give her the freedom to untangle those emotions on her own. You don't try to rescue her from her confusion. You don't try to argue her into certainty. You simply hold your position and continue living your life. That composure communicates security. It shows that you're not threatened by temporary distance. And that security often makes it easier for her to lean back in once her internal conflict settles. Because when distance is driven by confusion rather than indifference, clarity eventually brings emotion back to the surface. And when it does, you'll notice the shift. As long as you're the one chasing, she doesn't have to feel anything deeply. Your constant messages, your efforts to fix things, your attempts to stay connected, that they act like emotional cushioning. They soften the impact of distance. They protect her from experiencing what life feels like without you fully present. But the moment you stop chasing, something changes. When your attention is no longer automatic, when your validation isn't always available, when your presence becomes less predictable, she begins to notice the gap. And that gap creates awareness. Awareness creates reflection. Most men believe that pursuing harder will bring someone closer. In reality, over pursuing often creates imbalance. It shifts the dynamic where one person invests heavily and the other coasts comfortably. When you're always reaching, she doesn't have to. When you're always initiating, she never feels the need to step forward. Stepping back corrects that imbalance. It's not about playing games, it's about restoring natural polarity. Attraction thrives when there is mutual movement. If she feels you pulling away slightly, she instinctively feels the space open, and space invites action. When you stop chasing, she starts asking questions internally. Why did his energy shift? Is he moving on? Did I misjudge him? That internal questioning pulls her attention back toward you, and attention is the first stage of renewed attraction. Here's something powerful. People don't fully appreciate something when they believe it's guaranteed. Certainty reduces urgency. If she's certain you'll always be there no matter what, she relaxes emotionally. But when certainty decreases, emotional awareness increases. That's when feelings get louder. Without your constant presence, the silence amplifies what's underneath. She may start missing small things: your humor, your calmness, your consistency. She may begin comparing new interactions to what she had with you, and comparison often brings clarity. The key is that your step back must be genuine. If you withdraw but secretly wait anxiously for a reaction, your energy will still feel heavy. Real power comes from redirecting your focus to your own life. You become less concerned with her response and more invested in your own growth. That independence is attractive. When she senses that you're not trying to control the outcome, that you're comfortable either way, it shifts how she perceives you. You no longer appear as someone seeking approval. You appear as someone who values himself. And when self value is displayed quietly and confidently, it forces reevaluation, because once you stop chasing, she finally has the space to realize what she might lose. And sometimes that realization is what brings her closer again. Attraction is rarely about logic. It's rarely about checking boxes or analyzing pros and cons. Attraction lives in emotion. It lives in how someone makes you feel in their presence. And when distance happens, what lingers isn't a checklist, it's emotional memory. Long after conversations fade and details blur, feelings remain. She may not remember every word you said, but she remembers how she felt when she was around you. Did she feel safe? Did she feel understood? Did she feel feminine, relaxed, excited, playful? Emotional experiences leave deeper impressions than logical conversations ever could. When you're no longer around, those feelings don't immediately disappear. In fact, distance often intensifies emotional memory. The mind has a way of filtering out the minor frustrations and highlighting the moments that felt good. That's why nostalgia can be so powerful. It edits reality in a way that emphasizes emotional highs. She might find herself randomly remembering a moment you shared, a laugh, a look, a time you handled a situation calmly when others wouldn't have, a moment she felt truly connected. Those flashes aren't accidents, they're emotional anchors resurfacing. And here's the important part: she compares, whether consciously or unconsciously, she will compare new experiences to the emotional baseline you created. If another man doesn't make her feel the same way, if he lacks confidence, emotional stability, humor, or leadership, the contrast becomes clear, and contrast creates longing. This is why the way you carry yourself matters so much. If during the connection you were grounded, composed, focused on your purpose, and emotionally strong, that impression lasts. If you handled challenges without losing control, that stability becomes part of her memory of you. But if you reacted emotionally at the end, if you begged, argued, or tried to force things, that final impression can cloud the emotional memory. That's why maintaining your composure during distance protects your long term image. Emotional memory is tied to identity. She remembers not just what you did, but who you were in those moments. If being around you made her feel valued, feminine, energized, or safe, those emotions are hard to replace. And time has a way of amplifying what was rare. When she thinks about you, she isn't analyzing your flaws the way she might have during moments of tension. She's feeling the imprint of how you showed up. And if that imprint was strong, calm, and confident, it stands out. You don't need to remind someone how you made them feel. If the experience was genuine, the memory will remind them on its own. Because in the end, people don't just miss a person, they miss the emotions that person created inside them. At the end of the day, the clearest sign that she misses you isn't hidden in a like, a view, or a subtle comment. Those things can suggest curiosity, they can hint at emotional movement, but the real shift happens when she chooses to act, when she reaches out. Initiative is investment, and investment reveals value. A woman who truly feels nothing doesn't break silence. She doesn't look for excuses to reconnect. She doesn't test the waters. Indifference is quiet and permanent. But when she misses you, that emotion eventually builds enough pressure to move her toward you. The message might seem casual. Hey, it might be tied to something random. I saw something that reminded me of you. It might even feel small. What matters isn't the words, it's the fact that she initiated. That action tells you something powerful. You crossed her mind strongly enough for her to overcome hesitation, because reaching out after distance requires vulnerability. It means she's unsure how you'll respond. It means she's risking rejection. People don't take emotional risks for someone they don't care about. The moment she breaks silence, she's investing emotional energy again. This is where many men make a critical mistake. They either over celebrate and become overly available, or they punish her for the distance. Both reactions weaken the position you've built. When she reaches out, your role is simple: remain centered. You don't interrogate her about why she disappeared. You don't immediately bring up the past. You don't reward her with overwhelming attention either. You match her energy calmly. You allow the conversation to rebuild naturally. You give her the space to invest more. Remember, whoever invests more emotionally tends to feel more attachment. If she's the one initiating, let her continue leaning forward. Let her demonstrate through actions that she values the connection. Real power and attraction comes from patience. It comes from allowing someone to choose you freely. If she comes back because she genuinely misses you, the dynamic is healthier. There's less resentment, less imbalance, more authenticity. And if she doesn't reach out, that's clarity too. Because when you've maintained your composure, improved your life, and respected your own standards, you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're observing who steps forward willingly. When she initiates contact, it's not an accident, it's a signal. It means something inside her moves strongly enough to bring her back toward you. And that's the moment you know she didn't just think about you, she felt it.